Ladies and gentlemen, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. I'm sure if you spent some time watching some Warzone videos here on YouTube, you've seen some setups talking about how it makes the weapons have no recoil. And there's definitely some setups out there that do help out a lot in the control department, but there's also just some weapons that are extremely easy to use regardless of the control attachments you're using. I mean, these things are going to beam people all day, every day, and like I said, they are extremely easy to use. So today, we're breaking down the top 5 lowest recoil weapons we currently have here in Warzone. So if you enjoy the video at any point, or if you find it helpful, let me know by dropping a like on it. And of course, if you're new to the channel, or if you're not already subscribed yet, and you want to stay up to date with everything going on in COD, news, intel, tips, setups, you name it, it's all right here. So feel free to subscribe and maybe even turn on those post notifications. Now, first and foremost, when it comes to these low recoil or sometimes what does actually feel like no recoil setups, one aspect of the class stands above everything else. That is the person in control, that is you, because when it comes down to it, every single weapon is going to have a bit of control you need to master, just some have less than others, of course. However, thanks to the predictive recoil that we have here in Warzone, every single time you go to shoot any weapon in the game, the recoil pattern per weapon is going to remain the same every time you shoot. So you can simply learn how those patterns are going to work, and from that, you can actually control the weapon with ease and make that recoil look like it's pretty much non-existent. Now, the first weapon that we've got today is the Grau 5.56, and this thing is by far one of the easiest weapons to use in the entire game. Its recoil pattern is very easy to learn. It's basically just a slight clip to the left and then up and to the right throughout the entire mag, meaning you pretty much just have to pull down and follow whichever way your enemy is headed. There's really not much horizontal movement here, and whether you're on keyboard and mouse or controller, the Grau is going to be very, very easy to control just because its pattern is so simple. And yeah, with 60 rounds, obviously it does look like it has a lot of recoil and a lot of kick to it, but when you are actively trying to counter that by pulling down and then slightly to the left to correct that right side movement, you're going to be able to stay on target very, very consistently. Now, when you factor in the Grau's pretty good damage and range, you end up with a very low risk, high reward style of weapon, and as we know, this thing has been absolutely dominant in the past and honestly still competes in the current meta even though it's not as popular as it once was. So here for the setup, I'm rocking the monolithic suppressor for that range increase, the Archangel barrel, which is going to help out with the control, then also the range and the velocity as well, the Commando foregrip for even more control boost, the 60 round mags, then also the tac laser for better stability, in this case to basically make sure it's even easier to stay on target. Then next up, we've got the MAC-10, the newest SMG here in Warzone, and it would actually pair very well with the Grau if you wanted to run it side by side and essentially have two weapons that are very easy to use that are also incredibly efficient in all the other stat categories as well. Now obviously, you're not going to be using the MAC-10 outside of those close and occasionally medium range fights, which really is just even better news because up close when enemies are a larger target physically, it's going to be even easier to track them because none of the recoil will seem that bad whatsoever. The little recoil that there is to begin with anyways. Now the MAC-10's pattern is basically a vertical kick with a slight jump to the right after about 9 to 12 bullets or so, then it's back to the left pretty quickly, so it's almost the reverse of the Grau in that sense, but with our priority just being that vertical kick you're trying to counter, so this one doesn't really require much at all to actually counter or even learn. There's no strange kicks out to the left or right that are super harsh, so you can absolutely beam people with the MAC-10 all day long. And here I've got the agency suppressor, which actually does help with the vertical recoil some, the task force barrel, which doesn't hurt anything for the control even though it says it does, that's just another busted attachment. I've also got the field agent grip, which does help with all control aspects. Then the 53 round drum and the combat stock are on there too. Now, moving on, after the MAC-10, we've got the M4A1, weapon that has been a top dog pretty much ever since Warzone dropped. It was never really not a part of the meta, but it was also never really that #1 gun either. It was always just a great option for a very consistent weapon in almost every single category between mobility, control, damage, range. It pretty much is great at everything, which is why it has always been in the meta, while other weapons have come and gone. Now the M4's recoil is a bit more than the Grau's or even the MAC-10's, however it's also incredibly easy to counter because it's extremely consistent. This pattern goes up for a bit and then it veers to sort of a diagonal right kick, then it stays like that the entire time. So simply pulling down into the left to counter this on your mouse or controller is going to make this thing look like it is pretty much just shooting completely straight. By far one of the easiest patterns to counter in the game just because it is so simple. So this one is kind of a no-brainer on the lowest recoil weapons list. Now on the M4, I am running the monolithic suppressor again. Personally, I like the Corvus barrel. However, if you wanted even less recoil, you could also run the M16 barrel instead. Then I've got the Commando foregrip for the same reasons as before, the 60 round mags, and the stippled grip tape to round things out. Now, for setup number 4 today, I've got the MP7. By far, one of my favorite SMGs, and it has been one of my favorites pretty much since launch, primarily because it is incredibly easy to master. The MP7's recoil pattern is literally vertical with a small slant to the right, kind of like the Grau's, but without that weird veer to the left. So it's actually easier than the Grau's if you want to look at it like that. And just like the MAC-10, because you are using this primarily in those close range fights, the recoil is going to feel even less noticeable because you're going to be closer to the enemies when engaging. Then combine that with the fact that this pattern is extremely basic, you've got a weapon that takes no real effort to stay on target with. Definitely another easy pick for a video like this. Now, on the MP7, I've got the monolithic suppressor, the recon barrel for that better range and control. I actually don't use any grip here, but if you wanted even less recoil, you could always trade out the stippled grip tape or the tack laser for a Merc foregrip, but instead, I do use the tack laser, the 60 round mags, then the icon, the Stippy Grippy as well. And then finally for today, we've got the Kilo. This was once the king of Warzone. It was recently dethroned, but it was its range that fell short after the recent nerf. The recoil though is still as basic as ever, and part of the reason why the Kilo was the top dog for so long. Of course, the Kilo was pretty much the #1 weapon in the game, or was considered to be the #1 weapon in the game for months on end, and the recoil is definitely a huge factor in that. I mean, it was just so easy to stay on target. It still is, honestly. This pattern goes up to the left, then it flattens out, and then it continues going up and to the left. So if you're holding it down the entire time, it's going to be, a basic down into the right motion to actually counter this. Or you can fire some, stop, and end up actually sort of cheesing that slight up into the left pattern over and over and over again. Then it's going to be even easier to stay on target in my mind. And here on the Kilo, I'm running the monolithic suppressor, the Prowler barrel for better control and range, the Commando foregrip yet again, the 60 round mags, then finally the blue dot hollow sight. Pretty standard setup honestly, but still very easy and consistent all around. Now, even though these are the top 5 weapons that stand out to me the most when it comes to just being generally easy to use, you can apply this same idea to every single weapon in the game and use that predictive recoil pattern system to master any gun you want. You could do it with the AMAX, you could do it with the Odin. Any gun in the game is going to have that predictive setup, so all you have to do is learn that recoil pattern. Typically, I like to go into a private match or into Plunder if you're just a Warzone player. Put on the setups that you want to use, whatever that may be, Commando foregrip, Merc foregrip, some of the Cold War setups. Use that setup, spray into a wall, see how that pattern is going to work, and then, sort of train a little bit, focus on reducing that pattern, trying to counter that off the bat, and then apply that to your normal gameplay. It's going to look like you've got no recoil whatsoever. But yeah, there you have it. With all of that being said, those are the top 5 lowest recoil weapons here in Warzone right now, and that is going to wrap things up for today. If you enjoyed the video, or if you found it helpful, a like rating would be much appreciated. And of course, if you're new here and you want to stay up to date with everything going on in COD, from news to intel to tips to setups, it's all right here on the channel. So feel free to subscribe with your notifications turned on. That way you'll always know whenever I upload a new video. As always, if you want to check out any of my partners, be sure to use code WhosImmortal for a discount on all Scuff, G Fuel, and Control Freak products, and the links for all those can be found down in the description below. But once again, thanks so much for tuning in, and until next time, take it easy, have an awesome rest of your day, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace out.